Hey guys, today we are talking RED camera and in particular the RED DSMC2 Gemini. Do you know what day it is today?
Tuesday?
No,
What?
it's the day I stopped annoying you about my RED camera.
Yay!
Just got this baby and now I need to try to figure out how to assemble all of these pieces. The battery is already charging. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Guillaume Cornet. I'm a filmmaker based in Australia, and today I thought I would talk about RED cameras and especially the RED Gemini that is right here. So the RED Gemini is a 5K Super 35 camera and it's part of the lineup of RED. So RED is basically a camera manufacturer and they manufacture high-end cinema cameras for the cinema industry. What we have right here is the brain and it's basically a computer. This is where the magic happens. The whole DSMC2 range is composed of 4 cameras. So you've got the RED Dragon X, the RED Gemini like this one, the RED Helium 8K, and finally the flagship, the RED Monstro 8K. I'm not going to explain too much about the whole lineup, and I want to talk more about my use of the RED Gemini and what I've done with it. So I've used this camera for the past 18 months roughly for all kinds of projects, and I love it for a few reasons. First of all is the resolution. This is a 5K camera and the picture quality is incredible. Secondly, it does epic slow-mo, and slow motion is my favorite. I can shoot up to 120 frames per second in 5K, 300 frames per second in 2K. And finally, what differentiates this camera from the cheaper RED Dragon X? So basically this camera has a dual ISO. So when using it in low light, you are going to use a low light mode, which will enable you to have better performance in low light and more dynamic range as well. I run my own production company called Blue Media House, and I've filmed all kinds of projects with this camera, from tourism to commercial to weddings to luxury real estate. So one of the first things I need to mention is you can't film with just this because the brain is just the computer. This camera needs obviously a lens mount here, battery, storage, and as well a monitor to be able to see what you're filming. So even though it doesn't seem that big like this, the setup can get quite big. I really like the fact that this is a very versatile camera, which means I can rig it in many different ways, whether I want to film handheld or on a gimbal or in the car or on a boat. I'll be able to rig the camera to my needs and adapt it from one mount to the other. For this, I'm going to use, for example, cheese plates at the bottom and at the top to be able to mount all kinds of accessories like a photo focus, an audio recorder, and so on. One thing this camera doesn't do is it doesn't have autofocus. Most of the time, for example, I'm going to use this camera handheld and pull the focus manually by myself. The camera as well uses those mini mags, so let me show you here. So that's a RED Mini Mag. This one is 480 gigabytes. Storage is not cheap with RED, especially if you shoot 5K in ultra slow motion, you will go through this very, very quickly. So be mindful of that. Something I didn't mention, and this is maybe the main reason someone will want to go to RED, is the RED codec called R3D. With the RED RAW codec, you can basically control every parameter of your picture after you exported it to your computer, which means it's pretty much like a raw photo that you would take with your DSLR or mirrorless camera. You'll be able to control in post things like white balance, tint, and even ISO, which means I can be a bit more lazy, let's say, when I'm filming, because I know I don't need to have that perfect white balance when I film, because I'll be able to change it in post. On top of that, this camera has 16.5 stops of dynamic range, which means the camera will be able to retain much more information into the highlights and the shadows, even in some very tricky situation where, for example, you are in a forest and you've got very bright highlights and very dark shadows. Then with the camera, the other thing I bought from RED was the DSMC2 expander mount, so I can plug in a V-mount battery, and stuff like HDMI out, SDI out, control over the camera, direct DC input as well. If you are on the market to buy a Red DSMC2, I would strongly recommend not to go with the 5-inch monitor, but to go directly with the 7-inch monitor. I made that mistake when I first ordered the camera and it came with the 5-inch and immediately realized that it was going to be too small. You need to be able to see what you're filming, and for this reason I upgraded directly to the 7-inch. I then upgraded to the Cine 7 from a small HD because they offered an ultra wide screen that can control the camera, the Red as well. I'm using 2 lenses at the moment from Canon. Since I started filmmaking, I pretty much used only Sony cameras, which means I only have Sony lenses. When I invested into the Red Gemini, I had to go with Canon mount, and unfortunately Sony lenses don't go on any other mount. It's pretty much Sony lenses for Sony bodies. That's too bad because I love my Sony lenses. Unfortunately, they don't work on a Canon mount, so I had to invest as well into Canon lenses. And I first acquired a 18-35 Sigma 1.8. The only issue I did with this was an APS-C lens, and the issue was it was not covering the full sensor and I would see black edge when I was at 18. And I quickly replaced that lens with the Canon 24-70, and I as well acquired the 70-200 2.8, which is kind of my new favorite lens. So yeah, Canon lenses can go on Sony, but Sony lenses can't go on Canon so far. Unless you have a solution for me, I'll give you money. Something else I wanted to share with you as well, guys, is nearly a year ago I pre-ordered one of the Atlas Orion, the 40mm anamorphic lens, and I recently canceled my order because it was taking way too long. I basically paid the deposit in September 2019. We are in August 2020 and still haven't received any news from them. And to be honest with you, I really don't like to have my money sitting around like this for a year. I'd rather invest it into camera gear or even on the stock market. But basically, I kind of gave up on the lens and I'll rent them if I need them. Another thing too is I've mounted this camera on the Ronin S. It works. As surprising as it sounds, this camera can balance on the Ronin S. The Ronin S is incredible. I would not recommend filming a wedding like I did last year with it because this is a very heavy setup. And even though I was using the jetpack mount, which lets me use a V-mount battery at my belt, and I've got a cable running directly to the camera, which reduces the weight that I have to carry on the camera. Moreover, you don't want to have a V-mount and you don't want to have too much things. I like to keep my setup as compact as possible, especially filming a wedding. And that's why for bigger production, I actually invested into the Ronin 2. The Ronin 2 is actually perfect for this camera and heavier setup. You can go crazy, those models are huge. So basically it's just to tell you it's a chain reaction. You're going to buy a Red, then you need a Ronin 2, and then you need to invest into a ready rig like I did to protect your back because this is way too heavy. And don't get me wrong, I love working out, but carrying this beast is way too much for a full day and your back will definitely suffer. So do yourself a favor, get one of those ready rigs. So basically the ready rig is composed of 2 arms and bungees that are attached to your gimbal, and this is supporting all the weight of your gimbal and goes directly into your hips. The ready rig system with the Ronin 2 is great. However, since it's such a big system, it's going to reduce your freedom of movement. So this is something to be mindful of. Something I didn't talk about is basically how easy to use is the Red camera. It's actually easier than any mirrorless. You just need to press the button, which is right here. So this button here, obviously if you have a battery, that's going to power the camera, and all you need to do is then press record. So that button here is record. You've got another button here, record, and you can pretty much preset those to whatever you want to. It's so easy to use. You have all the controls on one screen and you can change all of the settings directly from the main screen. So things like ISO, aperture, white balance, tint, resolution, frame rate, and so on. Here, as you can see, you've got a few pins. That one at the front is for the Red monitor directly, so it's all cableless, which is really good. And that's the only thing actually I don't like about the Small HD Cine 7 is that you need a cable for the SDI, a cable for the power, so I power it through a P-tap that goes directly to my battery, and a third cable that is the control that goes from the monitor obviously to the module expander. So there's 3 cables and it's a bit messy. Here I've got another 3 pins basically for the handle with start and stop record button. I used the wooden camera version, and that's something else I wanted to talk quickly about. Most of the time I wouldn't buy Red product and I would actually look at what Small Rig does, wooden camera, Tilta. They all do cages or accessories for those cameras that are usually much cheaper and that are as good, if not better, depending on your need. A question I often get asked on social media is, how do you travel with the Red? And yes, it's not easy. And it's not so much carrying the Red itself, because this will fit in my backpack. The issue is carrying all those batteries. So you need V-mount batteries. Usually want to take 2 of these batteries. The charger is as well very big, so it's taking more space. I'm going to travel with my drone as well, and that's another 2 or 3 batteries, plus a charger as well. And I'm going to have the batteries for my mirrorless as well, for the Sonys. This all adds up very quickly, and the issue is with batteries is you can't check them in Australia. We have to take them as a carry-on. And if I want to travel, so basically in my backpack I'm going to have the brain, my mirrorless, and my computer. I'm already above the weight limit, and I've ended up many times putting them in my pockets, having a hoodie with a pouch to be able to put all those V-mounts, those batteries that end up being very heavy. So yeah, you may have seen my stories. It happens to me pretty much every time. I don't know if it's just me, but I get arrested all the time at the X-ray, and they always want to check what I have in my backpack, so I have to unpack everything. So yeah, it's kind of a downside of traveling with a cinema camera. But other than that, I never really had any issue, and I would travel with the Ronin 2 that I would check in, obviously. So I would try to use this camera for premium project, but I ended up choosing to go with the Gemini more times than I thought, actually, and kind of upgrading the client with this service, because for me, to edit the footage coming directly from the Red Gemini is actually a lot easier in terms of color grading. So basically I just import my footage into Final Cut, and I just apply a Rec 709 LUT onto the footage, and I'm pretty much done. I might tweak a bit the exposure and the white balance if I need to, but that's it. And most of the time for commercial project, it's already ready. So just by upgrading the client, even though they are not paying for it, I'm going to save time after in post. And this is more personal business decision where I'm going to choose maybe to invest a bit more for the client and give them a better value project, but on the other hand, I'm going to save time. To conclude this video, this leads me to talk about the new Red Komodo that's just being released, and I should get my hand very soon on Komodo Stormtrooper. Basically, let me know what you want to see with the Red Komodo, what you want me to try with it. Yeah, this year is very interesting in terms of cameras, with Canon releasing their new R5, Red Komodo obviously coming very soon, and the upcoming Sony A7S III, and I'm sure you already guessed, as soon as it's out, I'm going to get my hands on this one. So I think that's it, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate you watching this video, and I'll see you next time.